Good afternoon or good morning whenever you're watching this recording. I'm going to go through the steps that we discussed during the collecting and analyzing time audit data session and go through how to compile the data from the multiple teacher time diaries that you're going to collect into one analysis protocol. So you're seeing right now my screen. Right now I have pulled up a sample tracker. Obviously this is all fake data, but we're saying that I use this to collect data for myself. I had to make sure that the teacher shared it with me. I renamed it and shared it in my drive, or stored it in my drive, excuse me. And what I'm gonna do is, before I go through all of the time trackers, I'm gonna start and go one by one. And I like to have both the data pulled up, so you'll see that on the right hand of my screen, as well as the steps that I'm gonna take to clean the data on the left side. So this, the cleaning data step starts on page 23 of the time audit data collection guide. So I'm gonna work line by line and make sure that I clean this data before I'm gonna be putting it into the analysis protocol. So we're gonna go through it. This is gonna look a little bit different because we are only doing this one data and this one tracker, and only one day of data was collected in this example. But first, the first step is that we want to ensure that a date has been entered in each of the following cells. And it says the specific names of the cells. So there's E33, E87. I'm not going to go through and read all of them. On this example page, it looks a little bit different, but what we want to make sure is that there is data entered into this column or cell for each table. So we want to make sure that a date has been entered. As a reminder, we are asking that teachers collect data at least 5 work days and representing each day of the week. So one Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. If they do work on Saturdays and Sundays, we would also like them to document that. So we're always going to say that day 1 will be a Monday. In this case, this was done on 4/28. You'll notice that if there wasn't data entered here, this column would be empty. So it's really important that you check and make sure that data is entered here. If you notice that there was no date entered, I would just follow up with the teacher, make sure that you have the correct date entered. Next, you want to verify that at least 5 days of data have been collected. And if it hasn't, follow up with the teacher to see if they would be able to continue collecting the data during that third makeup window week. So to do this, I would just go through and count. So I see one day, this would be Tuesday, so the second day, Wednesday, the third day, Thursday, the fourth day, Friday, the 5th day. So again, for this example, I only put data in that first day, but we would want to make sure that there is data at least in all 5 of these days. Like I mentioned, there's also a Saturday and Sunday data option. Again, these are optional. Just if the teacher is doing work related to their position as a teacher, we ask that they record it. So once I verified that, my next step is going to be to review column F for outliers. So if you look at column F, this is the duration. This column is auto-created based on the start time and end time that are entered. So you want to see if anything looks odd. I'm seeing like 15 minutes, 20 minutes, an hour 15, nothing really out of the ordinary, until I get down to this line. I see negative 11 hours and 9 minutes. Obviously that was a mistype. If I go and look at the start and end time, I see that it says they started at 3:12 p.m. and then ended at 4:03 a.m. But if I look at the next time that they started their next activity, that was at 4:03 p.m. So clearly this was just accidentally recorded as a.m. instead of p.m. So all I would do is go in and change this and put it as p.m. and that will fix that negative. This is really important that you go through because it's really easy to accidentally enter an AM because it automatically goes to AM first. And again, it will give you that negative. Another way that you'll see that, I'm going to go back and add that negative back. You'll notice that this has occurred is if you go to the summary tab and I'm going to change this again to an AM. So again, I have that negative. If I go to the summary tab, and I'm seeing a bunch of negatives on here. So if you get to the summary tab, maybe you forgot to do that step 3 in the cleaning, and you didn't verify that there was no outliers, or maybe you just missed a negative. It's gonna show up in the summary. So right now I see negative 1.5 hours, and all of my percents are looking wonky. As soon as you see that, go back to your summary and do a double check and see where your negative is. And once I change this back to PM, once I go, then all my numbers are looking correct. My that's adding up to 100%, and my duration is looking a lot better. So all of the other durations are looking good in here. Other things that you want to look out for are anything that just doesn't make logical sense. For example, if something's recorded as they are spending 24 hours in one day leading instruction, clearly that was something that was not recorded correctly. If you look at the start and end time and you can clearly see what was misentered, then you can fix that. But otherwise, I would just go and I would highlight it, if I can find the highlight function, or just add a yellow, and then put a comment and say follow up with teacher, and then add that, and then wait to copy it over, so that you're really verifying and making sure that all the data that is entered is clean and valid. The next step is that you want to verify that a number reflecting the activity type has been entered into each cell in column G. So this is quickly, it's nice because it's color coded. So as long as the cell is colored, there has been an activity number entered. All right, the next step as we're cleaning the time tracker tab is going to be working row by row and reviewing the activity and description recorded by the teacher. And then in column I, recording whether that activity is either aligned to required teacher duties or above and beyond required teacher duties. So this is really you going through line by line, emails, read weekly newsletter. So align to required teacher duties, arrival duty, align. So this is you going through manually doing this. After you've cleaned all of this data, and I'm just gonna go and select some of these so I have data that populates. You're gonna go and navigate to the summary tab to do a couple other verifications. Again, the summary tab is what auto-populates based on what is entered in the teacher's time tracker. So moving down to the next part in our guide, the next step is to move to the summary tab. This tab is calculating totals based on the data collected in the tracker tab. Note that it's important to not modify any of the formulas in this tab. When reviewing this tab, you want to look for the following. Ensure that data are at least filling columns C5 through C9. C9. So that ensures that those 5 days of data were collected. Again, because I only entered data for that one practice day, it's only showing the one day, but you want to make sure that there is data in this tab. This first row C is the accumulation of all the time per day, so duration. So in all the activities that I recorded in that time tracker, it equated to 10 hours and 10 minutes. When you start looking at these color-coded tabs, this is when it gets into activity-specific duration. So there's 4 hours and 20 minutes spent on activity 1, which is teaches lessons. Activity 2, there was 15 minutes, and so forth. So really this one is where we want to check and make sure that we have at least those 5 days of data collected. You also want to review the data in column C and verify that there are no negative durations. If you notice a negative duration, it means that a start time was entered on the time tracker, but an end time was not recorded. It can also mean that an AM was entered when a PM should have been entered. So again, you would be going through and noticing that when you're verifying that there's no outliers in the time tracker, but this is another way to verify your data. Lastly, you want to verify that this last tab, or this column D42, is 100%. This is showing the duration and proportion of time by activity. So this is the same data that is presented in this row. So it's showing again that 4 hours and 20 minutes were spent on activity 1, which was teaches lessons. When you look at that by overall percentage of the total of 10 hours and 10 minutes, that made up 42.6% of the teacher's time. This is showing overall for all days. Again, because I only entered data for the one day, this is only showing one day. Also, just to show you, this last table is calculating the count of activity by category by day. So when we looked at the aligned to required teacher duties versus above and beyond, this is auto calculating that there was 5 tasks that were aligned to teacher duties and 3 that weren't. And then it also auto calculates the percentage of activities that were aligned to the required teacher duties and the percent of activities that were above and beyond. So now that I've gone through and cleaned my data tab, my next step is going to be to compile it all into my data analysis template. So right now, all of these directions are also again presented in the data guide, but just for ease of presentation, and it's easier for me to only present 2 different screens rather than 3 at a time, I'm gonna hide these. But just know, if I were you, I would have both of the individual teacher time diary, the analysis protocol, and then I would print out this guide so you have a hard copy to work through and check off once you have completed that step. But I'm gonna close that, and this is my analysis template. So first, before I go through, I'm gonna show you the overarching kind of how this operates. So again, you'll see at the bottom the summary tab, as well as the individual teacher tabs. This is created so that you can enter data for up to 10 teachers. If you have more teacher diaries that you've collected, you can message either Latanya or I, and we will work with you to add additional tabs, but 10 teacher time diaries should be more than adequate. On each of the time tabs, you'll notice that they look and they are identical to what is presented on the teacher time diary. They're just empty. Each of these are identical. They're just waiting for data to be entered. The summary tab, again, is pre-filled with all of these formulas that will auto-populate to account for all of the data entered into all of these different tabs. So I'm going to practice showing you how to copy the data over from the individual teacher time diary into this protocol. So first, what I'm going to do again is have both pulled up right next to each other. Here's my teacher time diary for teacher Koltnowski, and then my analysis template. I'm going to make sure that I'm on the summary tab, which I am. And my first step I'm going to do is copy over the data that fills in this table. So what I want to do is first start and select cell B5. I'll draw it down to B12. And then holding down my shift, will slide it all the way over to this last column of AB. A nice trick I like to look at is look up in this little corner, and we want that to say B5 through AB12. Also, these specific cell and names are in the data collection guide. That's why I think it would be really helpful for you to print that out to be able to verify. But we want to have all of this data selected. Once I have it selected, I'm going to go to Edit and Copy. Now I'm going to go to my analysis template, make sure I'm in my first tab, which is Teacher 1, and then I'm going to select cell B5. This is a really important step. So I'm going to go to Edit. I'm not going to do Paste. I'm going to do Paste Special and do Values Only. I'm going to show you why in a second. So when I do Values Only, you can see and I can verify that it copied over all of this data. And again, I know it's correct because it only showed for row 1. There's 10 hours, 10 hours, 4 hours, 4 hours. I always do a quick eye to make sure everything's adding up. Now really quick, I'm going to show you what would have happened if I did Edit Paste instead of Paste Special. So if I did Paste, it's going to show up and look like it's an error. That's because it's pasting the actual formulas that are used to calculate this, which is asking to pull from this tab of this sheet. So that's why it's really important that we go back and do Edit, Paste Special, Values Only. So now I see I have all of that data entered. Perfect. Now I'm going to go down to this second table. Again, I'm going to go down. I will start with cell C17, drag it over to D17, and then drag it all the way down to row 42. Again, I'll do Edit, Copy. Then I'll go over to C17 on my analysis template, go to Edit, Paste Special, Values Only. And then again, I verify that the total is matching up, 10 hours, 10 minutes, 100%. All right, and then now I just have the last tab to do, or table. So I'll go back to my teacher time diary. I'll select cell E47. I will hold my Shift key, pull it down to E51, and then drag it over to column K. You can look up here, we want it to be E47 to K51. Then I'll go up, do Edit, Copy. I'll navigate to my analysis template. I'll go to day 1, which is E48, and I'll do Edit, Paste Special, Values Only. And then again, I can see that data copied right over. Now that I've entered all of the data in my Teacher 1 tab, I would go to my next teacher and switch and go and pull up the Teacher 2 data, and then start working on compiling that and copying it over to the Teacher 2 tab. Once you have all of the data copied over, that's when you can go to the Summary tab, and this is where it's going to pull up all of the summarized data for you. So first up front, you want to make sure that this cell is correct, the total number of time diaries collected. This formula essentially is verifying that data has been entered into this cell. If there's data entered in B5, then it counts it as being completed. So just verify that that's correct, because this total number of diaries collected is going to help calculate some of these averages. So this first table is going over the duration of time by day and activity. It goes over total duration and then average duration. So remember, this total duration is going to show the total number of hours and minutes that all of the teachers completed each day of the week. So you'll be able to say day 1, which will be a Monday, what the total duration of time spent, and then the average, which is calculated by taking that total duration and dividing it by the number of diaries collected. This next one is getting into a little bit more detail. So this is showing the duration of time by day and activity. So it's going to answer the questions, how many teachers engaged in each activity by day? And then on average, how much total time was spent on each activity per day? So we'll look in the day 1, because this is where the data was first collected. Remember, this is the activity number. Number of teachers. This shows the number of teachers that actually recorded that they completed that activity that day. So again, because I only recorded 1 teacher, it's only showing 1, but it will show that 1 teacher participated in activity 1, whereas that teacher did not participate in activity 4. It also will show the total amount of time spent on those activities. And then it will also show the average, which again is the total duration divided by the number of teachers who reported that they completed that activity. The next table we're looking at is this table that calculates the duration and proportion of time by activity. So this is kind of summarizing what is presented in this big table up here that's presenting all this data by day. And then this is just showing overall the total duration of time spent on each activity for all 5 days, the average duration of time spent, and then the average percent of time that was spent on those activities. Then this last table is the count of activity category by day, again showing the number and percent of activities by whether they were aligned to required teacher duties or they were above and beyond. So that gives you a kind of a walkthrough of how to compile this data and then the automatic analysis that is going to be compiled or summarized once you compile all of that. I recommend that you work first teacher diary by teacher diary and clean each one individually. Then once you have all of those individual diaries cleaned, then I would go again diary by diary and copy them over to the analysis template. Then you'll make sure that you have covered and cleaned each individual diary so that the data that's being brought in is clean and is going to be useful as possible. We'll be working with you to kind of go over what this data says and kind of next steps to be doing the group analysis during our next training and coaching call together. If you have any questions or need any additional support, please do not feel like you can't reach out. We are here to support you, so please do. Thank you so much, and let us know if you have any other questions.